What is good, Ghost Mafians? Welcome back to the Real Talk Podcast with your host, Mr. Ghost. We're back at it, bringing the facts and the truth. We're putting it on the table. We're going to expose the lies, the hypocrisy, and the evil in this fallen world. As light bearers of Jesus Christ, it is our duty to carry our cross and to walk that narrow path. In this episode, we're going to be covering a lot on the Letitia James situation. But before we do that, please subscribe to the channel. Help us grow. Please hit that like button and share button because that helps spread the word. And do not forget to comment down below. You're concise on the Letitia James situation. Do you believe it's political retribution, or do you think there's real justice being served? In this episode, we're going to dive deep into the Letitia situation and how this is going to have impacts. And it's going to ripple through the justice system. It's going to ripple through our country. For far too long, I've sat in the back seat just watching the corruption, hearing it left and right, just letting it run rampant without giving my concise, my thoughts. That's no longer happening. A few episodes back, I talked about how the James Comey indictment was going to lead to an era of accountability. I said then, lock them up. If they break the law, I don't care if you're the president. I do not care. You break the law, you got to be locked up. I do understand there's certain immunities for a president. But when you're not a president and you are a private businessman, if you broke the law, lock them up. We could argue all day. We could debate all day, actually. Now, let's not argue, but let's debate it. Was Trump really guilty of all those charges they brought against him? Not really. But in this episode, we're going to dive into all of this. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Buckle up. Let's rock it because this is very interesting. All right, guys. So what led to this indictment? What created this mess for Letitia James? We all remember when she indicted Donald Trump on similar charges, that he lied on mortgage paperwork. He pretty much inflated his property value. He defrauded banks. Her exact words, nobody's above the law. We already know that aged very well, right? But that caused an internet world storm to dig into her. People on the internet found evidence of her and her actions, her lies, her deceit. Obviously, nothing was done about it. You know, this is well over a year ago that this was exposed. Biden's administration didn't indict her. They didn't go after her. They shrugged their shoulders. Nothing to see here. The issue is, when you go after innocent people, right, and you're persecuting innocent people, such as Donald Trump, we could say that because all his charges, I think most of the indictments he's ever faced has been thrown out. I do believe that the indictment for this fraud with him is still being played through the appellate courts. I do know that his one case down in Georgia is still pending, might be thrown out. But every other case, every other one that they presented all this evidence to was thrown out or dismissed, which tells you he was innocent. That was political hit job. 100%. They targeted him because they didn't want him back in the White House. Why? Because Trump knew their secrets. That's just facts. Trump knows every dirty little secret of these politicians. He knows how the tax system works. He knows of the corruption in our U.S. government. He knows what's been happening. So Letitia James went after him. Nobody's above the law, she said. Let's go look, because she said it herself. This aged very well.
Representing our respective states, stand up and enforce the rule of law. The President of these United States is not above the law.
No matter how rich, powerful, or politically connected you are, everyone must play by the same rules.
Please sue him for us.
Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the
And now the Trump Justice Department may be a pain in her you-know-what. The angle has obtained shocking allegations leveled by the Trump administration against New York Attorney General Letitia James. The Federal Housing Finance Agency has sent a criminal referral to the DOJ, accusing James.
Yeah, that happened. You know, that referral that she's referring to. It's because people on the internet started doing their digging. And obviously the director of the U.S. Federal Housing is looking for corruption. He's looking for fraud and waste. That's what Deutsch was doing. Because far too long, our taxpayer dollars have been being wasted. And it happens to find that she did lie on several documents. One of those documents, she claimed her father to be her husband. Kind of weird. Another document, she claimed that the building was a 4-dwelling instead of a 5-dwelling. Why? Favorable rates. Because anything above a 4 is multifamily. Different insurance rates, different mortgage rates. And she claimed that the home in Norfolk, Virginia was going to be her primary residence to obtain favorable rates. But we're going to dive into this document here by the U.S. Federal Housing, FHFA, the Honorable Pamela J. Bondi, the Honorable Todd Blanche, Department of Justice, criminal referral. This is rare for this to happen, but it's not the first time, and it won't be the last. Dear Attorney General Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, pursuant to my authority as Director of the U.S. Federal Housing Finance Agency, U.S. Federal Housing, or FHFA, I am referring the matter below as a regulator of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the Federal Home Loan Banks. We take very seriously allegations of mortgage fraud and other criminal activity. Such misconduct jeopardizes the safety and soundness of FHFA's regulated entities and the security and stability of the U.S. mortgage market. In the course of exercising U.S. federal housing authorities under the Federal Housing Enterprises Financial Safety and Soundness Act of 1992, U.S. federal housing has identified matters that are appropriate for referral to the U.S. Department of Justice. Didn't say Trump, said to the U.S. Department of Justice for consideration of criminal prosecution based on media reports. So here we are at this part. This doesn't come from Trump. This came from the media, because the media was digging into Letitia James. A lot of independent reporters, a lot of social media influencers that does this type of work that I do, they were digging into her. And they found a lot of public records on her misdeeds. Miss Letitia James has, in multiple instances, falsified bank documents and property records to acquire government-backed assistance and loans in more favorable loan terms. This has potentially included 1. Falsifying resident status for Norfolk, Virginia-based home in order to secure a lower mortgage rate. 2. Misrepresenting property descriptions to meet stringent requirements for government-backed loans and government assistance. Here's the background, ladies and gentlemen. And this is another part of this is going to affect New York's criminal justice system. If she's claiming she's a resident of Virginia, how can she hold a public office as Attorney General in New York? That is going to be a bigger question, guys. And that might impact a lot of criminal cases that were under her belt, including Trump's, by the way. Because she wasn't considered, in all instances, a true legal resident of New York based upon her documents. On August 17th, 2023, Miss James granted Miss Shamise Thomas Hairston power of attorney to make a Virginia property her principal residence. See Exhibit A. And on August 30th and August 31st of that same year, I'm paraphrasing, guys, so here we go. Through her attorney, Miss James purchased this property in Norfolk, Virginia, in Fannie Mae Freddie Mac Form 3047. By the way, these are federal documents. These are filed with public records. So, like, the amount of stupidity of this is ridiculous. I don't think she really fathomed that when she went after Trump that people are going to start digging into her to see if she'd done the same exact thing, to look for hypocrisy. And she did worse than Trump, to be honest, because every real estate investor pretty much inflates their properties. This was really just her lying blatantly on documents to get favorable loan terms. In a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac Form 3047 in the mortgage document, she reaffirmed that this would be her primary residence, despite being a statewide public office holder in the state of New York at the same time, primarily residing in the state of New York. See Exhibit B. Oh, it gets dirty. In fact, a building permit issued on her New York property on July 15, 2024, lists her New York property as the James residence and states remain occupied. They're showing it right here. Letitia James self, James residence, nonprofit, no. Individual is currently occupied, remains occupied. Owner certified regarding occupancy, house and rent control stabilization, no. And this is key, guys, because she prosecuted a lot of cases here in New York. She pushed through a lot of prosecution of many cases. These cases have a possibility of being thrown out if she's an illegitimate attorney general. If she's not a resident of New York, she can't hold that office. It is a public office. So what are you? Are you a resident of New York? Or are you a resident of Virginia? You can't have it both ways. Yes, you can have a secondary vacation home down there, but you can't make it your primary residence when you hold public office. Primary resident mortgages receive more favorable loan terms, including lower interest rates than secondary resident mortgages. Lenders view secondary residence mortgages as significantly riskier, as borrowers is more likely to continue paying off a primary residence mortgage during a financial hardship. Interest rates on a secondary residence mortgages are typically between a 0.25 and a 0.50% higher than the primary residence counterparts. However, this gap can widen depending on the lender. At the time of 2023 Norfolk, Virginia property purchase and mortgage, Miss James was sitting Attorney General of New York and is required by law to have her primary residence in the state of New York, even though her mortgage applications list her to have an intent to have the Norfolk, Virginia property as her primary home. It appears Miss James' property and mortgage-related misrepresentations may have continued to her recent 2023 Norfolk, Virginia property purchase in order to secure the lower rate and more favorable loan terms. This is her property here. January 26, 2001. This is going all the way back 20 plus years. Certificate of occupancy lists this property as having 5 units. See Exhibit C. On February 14, 2001, Miss Letitia James purchased a 5-family dwelling. Miss James secured a conforming loan through the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac Form 3033. Conforming loans are only available on 4-unit or less structures. Spanning the 2 decades, Miss James has consistently misrepresented the same property as only having 4 units in both building permits, applications, and numerous mortgage documents and applications. This even includes a 2011 application for a home affordable modification program. See Exhibit D, and most recently a 2019 mortgage refinancing through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac lender. See Exhibit E. Ooh, these are hammering, guys. We're almost there. Conforming loans or Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac backed mortgages have favorable rates and terms to traditional private market mortgages for explicit purpose of availability to lower and middle income borrowers. She's not middle. She's not lower. She makes over $200,000. Conforming single family loans are subject to a cap of 4 dwellings per property. I understand she was a lawyer back then, I believe. She was definitely not middle class or lower class. A building that exceeds 4 units must be treated as a multi-family property and typically has a larger down payment requirement and higher interest rate terms, with interest rates between 0.75 all the way up to a 1% higher due to the lender's view in multifamily loans as significantly riskier. Additionally, the government's Home Assistance Modification Program was started in 2008 to provide homeowners at risk of foreclosure with reduced monthly mortgage payments, and recipients had to have properties with 4 dwellings or less. It appears that Ms. James may have listed the Brooklyn, New York property as 4 units instead of 5 units in order to meet the conforming loan requirements, and thus received better interest rates. Ms. James also appears to have used the same falsification in order to receive mortgage assistance through HAMP. Here's the analyst. Ms. James, for both properties listed above, appears to have falsified records in order to meet certain lending requirements and receive favorable loan terms. U.S. Federal Housing, FHFA, believes this and other alleged misconduct could be violations of the criminal code under 18 U.S.C. 1343, wire fraud, 18 U.S.C. 1341, mail fraud, 18 U.S.C. 1344, bank fraud. And obviously that's one that she got indicted on. The other ones so far not. 18 U.S.C. 1014, false statements of financial institution, and other relevant state and federal laws. For your reference, I've also attached documents which shows in 1983 that Miss James and her father, I'm going to throw up at this one, signed mortgage documents that stated that they were husband and wife in order to secure a home mortgage. See Exhibit F. Then on May 4th of 2000, Miss James was listed again as husband and wife in documents. See Exhibit G. While this is a long time ago, it raises serious concerns about the validity of Miss James' representation in mortgage applications. So 40 plus years of her lying. I'm 40 years old. I was born two years after this, so 42 years worth of lying on documentations. There are unfortunately too many examples of individuals who commit fraud or mortgage fraud. This just last year, a federal jury convicted Marlon J. Mosby of Baltimore, Maryland, on the federal charge of making false mortgage application when she was a Baltimore City state's attorney, relating to the purchase of her property in Florida. Just last week, after hard work of our agency, IG, and the DOJ, a St. Louis man pled guilty fraudulently obtaining home mortgages. As always, we look forward to cooperating with the Department of Justice to support any actions that the Department of Justice finds appropriate. U.S. Federal Housing, FHFA, appreciates the Department of Justice support in assuring the protection of the American homebuyers and taxpayers from mortgage fraud and other financial misconduct. Respectfully, William J. Poulant. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was sent out back in April. So, yeah, that was sent out in April, guys. So, out in April, they literally sent that out. And you got to see the frustration of the American people. That was made public back then, and I never really talked about it. And I should have, because there has to be accountability, right? When you break the law, you got to be held accountable. We got to stop whitewashing. We got to stop just taking it easy on people because they hold a certain amount of power. I do not care if you lie and you commit fraud, and there's evidence of fraud, a bank being defrauded, okay? You have to understand, when it came to the Trump situation, Trump did inflate his property value, that's it. But the bank came back and fixed it, and all was good. Bank actually made money off of Trump. in the Letitia James situation, the bank lost money because she got favorable loan terms. She got favorable interest rates. So the bank is not making as much money. Even if it's only 20, 30,000 less, you're still defrauding the bank. Letitia, you got to understand, you open a can of worms that was going to give you a good weapon. You did this to yourself. These aren't false charges. These aren't Trump going to make things up. The media, the internet, they all snooped and found your dirty laundry. And now you're exposed. And now you want to play the victim card that you are being unjustly retribution because you went after Trump and his wrongdoings. Well, Trump was innocent in that. A lot of people agreed with that. I'm still not sure if it went through the appellate courts yet or not. We will determine that. But I believe it is going to be thrown out. So and obviously Trump is upset. There are so many cases to where this type of behavior has been going on for far too long. And we've dealt with months with no prosecutions, no indictments. The evidence was overwhelming. There was a U.S. attorney that just basically refused. He didn't refuse because there was no evidence. Because if there was no evidence, right, let's say he was correct, right? The guy said, well, there wasn't enough evidence, sufficient evidence to get an indictment. Well, the evidence she presented was the same evidence he had, and there was an indictment twice. So now we need to look into that former attorney, that former U.S. attorney, and see whether if he's corrupted. Why haven't you brought this? Were you too scared? Or you got skeletons in the closet you're trying to keep in? That's a bigger question. Let's dig into the Donald Trump and why he was pushing this and why Donald Trump was upset. All right, so we're at the big screen, ladies and gentlemen. Donald Trump posted this back in the 20th of September. Pam, I reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that it's essentially same old story as last time. That's why I love Trump, because he's all talk and action. All talk, no action. Nothing is being done about Comey, Adam Schiff, and Letitia. They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is gonna be done. Then almost put in a Democrat supported U.S. attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican pass, a woke rhino who was never going to do his job. So yeah, that's who he's talking about. The former. Oh, so he's a Democrat supportive U.S. attorney. So that's why. Okay, that kind of makes sense. A woke rhino who never going to do his job. That's why two of the worst Dem senators pushed him so hard. He even lied to the media and said he quit and that he had no case. No, I fired him. And there is a great case. And many lawyers and legal pundits say so. Lindsay Halligan is a really good lawyer and likes you a lot. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice. I don't know why he puts this, and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. So you guys got to understand why Trump is upset. He's an innocent man that's been pretty much nailed against the wall. His reputation's been smeared. He's been destroyed in the public eye. All because he loves his country and he wants his country to be better. He wants the corruption brought under control. He wants all the evil in this country to be pretty much taken out, you know what I'm saying? And the consensus of spreading the word of Jesus Christ and obviously, implementing accountability and law and order. We can't have a lawless society. So you got to understand that last part, he's very upset. And that this attorney, U.S. attorney, was pretty much in bed with the Democrats. He was being pressured. So we must come to understand that he was never going to do his job. The evidence was overwhelming, especially to a point where a grand jury indicted 2 of them, all because a real U.S. attorney is like, you know what, I'm going to uphold the law. I'm not going to turn a blind eye to it. So before you run out there and say, well, this is political retribution, Look at the evidence yourself. Did she misrepresent? And the problem I have with this, and we're going to go a little bit further down the line with this, towards the end, I'll give you my concise why I think this is going to jeopardize a lot of criminal cases in New York. Because if she is a true resident of Virginia, she can't hold office in New York. She's not a resident. So yeah, Letitia James lied. And we have some very concerning documents that might jeopardize a lot of criminal cases in New York. She claims to have her primary principal residency down in Norfolk, Virginia. Can't be Attorney General of New York if you're living in Virginia, if that's your primary residence. Letitia, a lot of criminals might get away with their crimes because you lied to receive favorable loans. Have it make sense in the comments, guys. Now, before you guys jump on the bandwagon and start attacking and saying, Mr. Ghost, you could be lying. Well, how about if I bring a little receipt? Power of attorney, purchase of real estate. As you can tell, this is not going to look good for her. Known all men by these presidents that the undersigned Letitia A. James does hereby constitute and appoint Shamise Thomas Hairston of the city of Norfolk, state of Virginia, as her attorney in fact, for her in her name, place, instead, to undertake and do all acts necessary to complete the purchase of the property known as 604 Sterlington Street over there in Virginia, Norfolk. Execution of the deed of trust in the loan amount not to exceed $225,000. Execution of real estate settlement procedures act forms. Execution of note miscellaneous loan closing documents and a loan amount not to exceed $225,000, and execution of purchase agreements and addendums with a sales price not to exceed $250,000. I hereby declare that I intend to occupy this property as my principal residence. Well, guys, there it is. There's the receipt. She cannot be a legitimate Attorney General of New York if your principal property, your primary residency, is Virginia. Our governor needs to impeach her, remove her. And now we need to question every criminal case that she's ever brought forth to the courts. Was she legally allowed to file those criminal charges against Trump? Was she legally allowed to file criminal charges against many, many, many people in this state since she's been Attorney General? It jeopardizes a lot of good cases that people deserve to be locked up because of her lies. All right, guys, so we're going to look at two posts over there on the beautiful, wonderful Twitter, aka X. There are two posts I really want to look at before we move on to the Letitia James response. We're going to go to a big screen. So this guy, TMK, posted this. Pam Bondi has been handed overwhelming evidence. The Russia hoax, we know about that, exposed by Tulsi Gabbard. Jack Smith's illegal spying on sitting U.S. senators. Mortgage fraud committed by Letitia James. Mortgage fraud committed by Adam Schiff. Mayor Brandon Johnson and Governor J.B. Oh, there's more. Let's unfold this. J.B. Prasker openly defied federal law and calling for violence against ICE agents. And after all that, the only thing Pam Bondi has managed to do is to indict James for lying to Congress, and no perp walk, no arrest, no mugshot. What a joke. This was back on the 6th of October. Somebody added more. Russiagate 2016 election interference. August 2025, grand jury active. Jerome Powell, false testimony. That's Representative Lona, July 2025. Anthony Fauci, perjury. Lissa Cook, mortgage fraud. Adam Schiff, housing finance issues. Letitia James, mortgage fraud. Andrew Cuomo, COVID policies. I think we should leave Andrew alone until he wins the election in New York. We don't want Mandani to be in charge. James Comey, John Brenner, Russian probe, Obama officials, John Bolton, Jared Wise. Read all that, ladies and gentlemen. Pretty crazy. A lot of corruption. Our boy Nick Sorter over here, go follow him and subscribe to his channels. Letitia James posted this referring to Trump. Turns out she was actually the one committing bank fraud, not the president. Just incredible. When powerful people cheat to get better loans. Oh, this aged as good as sour milk. Oh, I could taste it now. As better loans. It comes to the expense of hardworking people. Everyday Americans cannot lie to the bank and get a mortgage. And if they did, our government will throw the book at them. There simply cannot be a different rule for different people. Well, Letitia, how did that age well? I could guarantee you're just sitting there dwelling and within the pain of this, because the entire community on the internet, right? The entirety of this community on the internet literally just went after you. They looked into every nook and cranny you had, and the media reported on it. You know, then obviously the U.S. housing, federal housing is going to look into it and be like, is there something here? Or is it false? And they came back with your loan documents, not made up, nothing that's doctored. Your handwriting, your signature, your name. The evidence is overwhelming to the point where you're indicted now. Now, that doesn't mean she's guilty. That doesn't mean there is a presumption of guilt there. She's presumed innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. So it makes our country great. But your own words, you're not above the law. Now, we're going to get into your response. And we're going to go to a big screen with this. And I'm going to respond to you. I'm going to try not to interrupt it. I'm going to try. Matter of fact, we are going to go to the smaller screen and I'll be in the corner. But we'll give her an opportunity to address the matter. And I'll try not to intervene. I'll try to let her have her voice. But if I catch her lying, I'll call out her BS.
This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system. He is forcing federal law enforcement agencies to do his bidding.
Okay, I got to stop that real quick. I mean, we're not even, 12 seconds in the video? Letitia, listen to me. Under Biden, we witnessed the weaponization of our justice system. We witnessed the weaponization of Twitter to suppress the voices of the right, to suppress the voices of the American people. We've witnessed under the Biden administration the amount of corruption. We witnessed it under the Obama administration. It's the same exact crap. The weaponization of our Justice Department. This isn't Trump, going up to his attorney general and handing her fake stuff to charge you with. There is actual evidence with your name, your signature on those papers. So I'll let you continue. But right now, there's a lot of BS coming out of your mouth. You might want to brush your teeth after.
All because I did my job as the New York State Attorney General. These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost. The president's actions are a grave violation of our constitutional order and have drawn sharp criticism from members of both parties.
40 minutes now, going to stop again. We can say maybe she's correct in that one part. Maybe Trump is trying to get some retribution for what he had to go through. We already know that the Trump case itself is still playing out through the courts. We do know the penalty was thrown out because that was a violation of his constitutional rights. We are still waiting. Obviously, she's appealing that, but we're waiting for it to play its way through the system. It might work its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. And if it does get to the Supreme Court, it'll be thrown out. Because even the banks themselves, the victims she claimed to be the victims, came out and said we weren't defrauded. So if there's no victim, there's no crime. But I'll let her continue, and I do apologize. You guys got to smell the BS.
His decision to fire a United States attorney who refused to bring charges against me and replace them with someone who is blindly loyal not to the law, but to the president, is antithetical to the bedrock principles of our country.
Once again, I apologize. I really do. But once again, that attorney you're talking about was aligned with your political views. He was aligned with your party. There was clear evidence of a crime, okay? Not brought by Trump. It was brought by the director of the U.S. federal housing, the one that oversees our mortgages that are backed by the federal government. And they found clear evidence that you were lying, that you were misrepresentation on these documents, which is a crime. And yes, there is, Halligan was a former attorney of Trump's, but she presented the same exact evidence that lawyer had, right, to the same grand jury. The other guy refused to bring it to a grand jury. He said, there's nothing here to see. There's nothing to see, everybody. There's nothing. There's no evidence. There's not enough to bring charges. But yet, Halligan brings the same exact documents, the same exact evidence. 2 indictments. Maybe he should be investigated.
This is the time for leaders on both sides of the aisle to speak out against this blatant perversion of our system of justice. I stand strongly behind my office's litigation against the Trump Organization. We conducted a 2-year investigation based on the facts and evidence, not politics. Judges have upheld the trial court's finding that Donald Trump, his company, and his 2 sons are liable for fraud. I'm a proud woman of faith, and I know that faith and fear cannot share the same space. And so today, I'm not fearful. I'm fearless. And as my faith teaches me, no weapon formed against me shall prosper.
That's not what your faith teaches you. That's what God teaches us. Letitia, you can't even say God in the same sentence of your lies. You're trying to represent yourself as a woman of faith, but yet you're lying to the American people. See, I forgive very easily, and it's my duty to do so. I think a lot of people would forgive you if you just come out and say, yes, I messed up. I lied on these documents. I'm guilty of it. I made mistakes. I'll own up to those. And we already know the whole Trump thing is still playing out in the courts. It's not a final decision. We do know that the one appellate court did come out and say that Trump and his organization, his 2 sons, are liable for fraud, but that's being appealed as well. And eventually it might work its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. But I don't like people claiming to have faith and lie. As you clearly say, she will not say God. My faith teaches me. No, God taught us that. God the Father. Why are you sitting there misrepresenting God? You can't even say the word God because you're lying. And you know you're lying. And God hates a lying tongue. I pray for your soul.
We will fight these baseless charges aggressively.
Okay.
And my office will continue to fiercely protect New Yorkers and their rights. And I will continue to do my job.
All right. She will continue to do her job. But you're not a resident of New York, according to all this paperwork. According to everything, you're not even a resident of New York. Your primary residence, as you put in these inside these applications, would be Norfolk, Virginia. Guys, we're going to look into her indictment, and we're going to push forward with several other things that we found on Twitter that we are literally going to address, and we're going to hammer down and expose these people's lies. There are 3 individuals that we're going to expose these lies about. But let's look at the indictment. Let's go to the bigger screen, please. There we go. So now we're at the bigger screen. This is criminal number 225CR122. It is certified by the United States District Court, Eastern District of Virginia, Norfolk Division. So this is the same evidence that this other attorney had that he completely and utterly failed to bring forth. Let's go over it. I love seeing these because I have a law degree, guys. I love seeing stuff like this. It brings a lot of euphoria. So count 1, bank fraud, 18 USC 1344. Count 2, false statements to a financial institution, 18 USC 1014. These are 2 additional criminal forfeitures, 18 USC 981A 1C and 982A. 28 USC 2461. These are criminal forfeitures. Back in, we're going to look at the grand jury charges that has general allegations. At all times relevant to this indictment, Letitia A. James was a resident of Brooklyn, New York, and a borrower on a Fannie Mae-backed mortgage loan for the property located at 3121 Purdue Avenue, Northville, Virginia. OVM Financial, also known as Old Virginia Mortgage, Annie Mac, was a mortgage lending business located in Virginia Beach, Virginia, engaged in business in originating and underwriting residential mortgage loans, including those backed by the Federal National Mortgage Association, otherwise known as Fannie Mae. OVM Financial qualified as a financial institution within the meaning of 18 USC 1020 underscore 10. Fannie Mae was federally chartered corporation that purchased and guaranteed mortgages, operating as a government-sponsored enterprise under the oversight of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, FHFA. First Savings Bank was a state-chartered FDIC issued financial institution certified 29961, headquartered in Jeffersonville, Indiana, which required mortgage loans through the assignment and acquisition. First Savings Bank qualified as a financial institution within the meaning of 18 USC 20 within parenthesis 1, section 1. On or about August 17, 2020, James was sole borrower purchase of the 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom property located at 3121 Purnell Avenue. If I said it wrong, I do apologize, Virginia. The Purnell property is approximately for $137,000, financed with a mortgage loan approximately $109,000. This is the loan number, backed by Fannie Mae. The loan was originated by OVM Financial under a signed second home rider, which required James as the sole borrower to occupy and use the property as their sole secondary residence and prohibit its use as a timesharer or other shared ownership arrangements or agreements that required her either to rent the property or give it to another person, any control over the occupancy or use of the property. Let me zoom in a little bit if you guys can see this a little bit better. Despite these representations, the Purnell property was occupied and used by James as a secondary residence, was instead used as a rental investment property, renting property to a family of 3. The misrepresentation allowed James to obtain favorable loans terms not available for investment properties, including a note rate of 3%, avoiding the 0.815 higher comparable investment property rate of 3.815, resulting in approximately $17,837 in rate savings over the life of the loan. A seller credited approximately $3,288, exceeding the seller credit for investment properties at approximately $1,096, for a total ill-gotten gains of approximately $18,933 over the life of the loan. James, universal property application for homeowners insurance, indicted owner, occupied non-seasonal use, further misrepresenting the intent use of the property. James filed Schedule E tax forms under the penalties of perjury, treating the Purnell property as rental real estate, reporting fair rental days, 0 personal use days, thousands of dollars in rent received and claimed deductions for expenses related to the property, further contradicting the second home classification. The loan was acquired by and assigned by First Savings Bank in March of 2021, exposing it to risks associated with the misrepresented loan. The acts described herein occurred within the Eastern District of Virginia. Count 1, here we go, we're getting into the counts now, guys. Bank fraud, 18 U.S.C. 1344. The allegations in paragraphs 1 through 12 are realigned or re-alleged and incorporated herein. From on or about August 7, 2020 through at least January 2024 in the Eastern District of Virginia and elsewhere, the defendant, Letitia James, did knowingly execute an attempt to execute a scheme and artificiate to defraud OVM Financial and First Savings Bank financial institution to obtain money, funds, and credits owed by and under custody and control of OVM Financial and First Savings Bank by means of false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises. The scheme involved falsely representing the Perone property as a secondary residence to obtain favorable mortgage terms while using it as an investment property with no intended or actual personal occupancy or use by her, in violation of Title 18 United States Code, Section 1344. Count 2. False statements to a financial institution, 18 U.S.C. 1014. The allegations in the paragraph 1 through 12 are realleged and incorporated herein. From on or about July 28, 2020 through at least August 31st of 2020 in the Eastern District of Virginia or elsewhere, the defendant, Letitia James, did knowingly make calls to be made false statements and reports for the purpose of influencing the action of OVM Financial, a Fannie Mae backed lender, upon an application for a loan, and that James represented in a firm in uniform residential loan applications and related documents that the Perone property would be used as a secondary residence, when in truth and fact, as James then knew, the property was intended to be used tenant and used as an investment property with no intent of actual personal occupancy or use by her, in violation of Title 18 U.S. Code, Section 1014. Here's the forfeiture notice. Pursuant of Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 32.2 and Title 18 U.S.C. 982A2A, upon conviction of the offenses in the counts 1 and 2, the defendant, Letitia James, shall forfeit to the United States any property constituting or derived from proceedings obtained directly and indirectly as a result of such violations, including but not limited to the money judgment to the amount of $18,933. If any of the property described above as a result of any act or omission of defendant cannot be located upon exercise of due diligence, B, has been transferred or sold to or deposited with a third party, has been placed beyond the jurisdiction of the court, has been substantially dismissed in value, and has been comminguled with other property with cannot divide without difficulty, the United States shall entitle the forfeiture of substitute property pursuant of Title 21 U.S.C. 853B, incorporated by Title 18 U.S.C. 982B1, in accordance to the Title 18 U.S.C. with all these codes. Ladies and gentlemen, holy, 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 holy. She's guilty, guys. The evidence is overwhelming. This is the same evidence that was presented to the previous attorney, U.S. attorney there, and he just refused. He said there wasn't enough evidence. There wasn't enough proof to bring charges to a grand jury. This is the same exact stuff, but the grand jury came back on 2 counts. My guy, you failed. Derelict of duty. This isn't a political hit job, ladies and gentlemen, but we're going to look at 3 posts. And I'm going to give you my concise on these. We're actually going to go to the beautiful short screen with me in the corner. And we're going to dive a little bit further into what these 3 individuals are talking about. Here we have the wonderful Mrs. Jasmine Crockett out of Texas. She's another great liar. They're targeting New York Attorney General Letitia James for one reason. She had the courage to hold Donald Trump accountable. This is a political weaponization of our courts, plain and simple, and proof that when you stand up to corruption, they come for you. I stand with Attorney General Letitia James. This attack won't silence the truth. Here we go. This is somebody else who posted this. I kind of agree with this person. 9 months, 0 arrests. And now we are witnessing that coming true. Wow. And this guy is a joke. Harry Session is a joke. Wow. Trump just indicted Letitia James. And this is where I get agitated with these type of people. Wow. Trump just indicted Letitia James. No. A grand jury indicted Letitia James on true charges. Yet again, prosecutors weren't going to bring charges because they couldn't find any evidence. So Trump stepped in, appointed loyalists, and forced them to do it. Another dark day for America. Guys, we have a problem. We have a major, major problem in this country. And the problem in this country has a lot to do with the devil, Satan. Okay? There are a lot of liars. You just saw those 3 posts. You know, one, obviously the middle one is just a straight fact. There was, for 9 months, we dealt with nothing major going down until the James Comey hammer down. Harry Boy, Jasmine Crazy Crockett, guys, listen, just stop your lying. This isn't a dark day in America. This is justice. This is our courts holding people accountable. I don't know how Harry can sit there and say Donald Trump indicted her. Donald Trump didn't indict her, you idiot. You have to be real stupid to say something like that and misrepresent your words, to lie to people, to gaslight people to think Donald Trump is indicting people. Fun fact, he can't indict nobody. He's the president of the United States, you idiot. You lawless idiot. This is the same evidence, as I said earlier, same evidence that the previous U.S. attorney had, that the new U.S. attorney has. She presented it to a grand jury. And listen, the grand jury came back, said, yeah, we found nothing. And okay, Trump, knock your crap off. Stop it. But no, it came back as being true. That what the U.S. Federal Housing, that oversight committee, that oversight agency, found was credible enough for 2 indictments, for 2 counts. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a very dark day in America where people can lie and think they get away with it. This isn't a political witch hunt. We can legitimately say that under Biden, the Justice Department was weaponized. We literally had people being pretty much arrested for speaking up at town halls, speaking up at school board meetings, you know what I'm saying? Fathers, mothers being arrested because they didn't want their kids exposed to this evil ideology of the far left. Where was your war cry back then? Where was all this voice of standing up to corruption back then? We should dig into Congress and start questioning why a lot of our politicians are multimillionaires as public servants. Guys, give me your concise about this. Don't forget to comment down below. I know this has been a long one, but I greatly appreciate you guys so much. God bless you guys, and I'm going to catch you all in the next one.